This episode of Recording Studio Rockstars is brought to you by iZotope, Native Instruments, Roswell Pro Audio, and Atom Audio. You're hearing my voice right now through the beautiful Roswell Pro Audio Aztec tube microphone, mixed through iZotope, Ozone, RX, and Neutron, all on Atom Audio monitors and headphones. Please check out our awesome sponsors using the links in the show notes. Also, please remember to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel because it's a great way for you to help support this show. Now get ready to rock.
And the analogy that I've come up with is that I have made permanent my ideal meal. Imagine being able to, like someone says, what's your favorite meal? Oh, it's like sushi and blah, blah, blah. And, or like it's like French fries and
it's
a chocolate
marmalade
shake.
And pickles.
Whatever it is. And it's like, but imagine eating that meal like over and over and over again and you kind of get tired of it. But let's say you didn't. Imagine you didn't get tired of, you crafted the perfect flavors and balances and all this, and every time you listened or ate it, it triggered those exact senses in the exact way that you wanted it to.
Yeah.
That's what I've done with these mixes, like to whatever extent they're good or bad, other people like them, whatever. From the material that's there, I crafted something that every time I listen to it, it is just this perfect, it is this wonderful meal for the ears.
Welcome to Recording Studio Rockstars. I'm Lij Shaw, and this is the podcast created to help you become a rock star of the recording studio. At iZotope, tone shaping is topping the charts. Meet the Catalyst series, Plasma, Aurora, and Cascadia. Plasma's flux saturation technology brings dynamic warmth and depth to your mix. Aurora takes spatial audio to new heights with lush adaptive reverb, while Cascadia adds exciting delays to your mix, retaining clarity through its smart unmasking feature. Get 10% off Plasma, Aurora, Cascadia, or any of the iZotope plugins with the special code ROCK10 and make your mixes rock at iZotope.com. Howdy, Rockstars. It's your host, Lij Shaw, and welcome back to Recording Studio Rockstars, bringing you into the studio to learn from recording professionals like my guest here today so that you can make your best record ever and be a rock star of the studio yourself. My guest today is Alex Oana, rejoining us on the podcast. It's been a minute. Alex is currently Vice President of Marketing for Sound Vision Works. He has over 35 years of experience in the audio industry. Throughout Alex's career, he's chosen risk and reinvention, which is a cool topic we'll hopefully get into. Initially a musician and a live sound engineer, in 1994, he bought the former home of Twin Tone Records to start his own studio, City Cabin in Minneapolis, where he earned 11 Minnesota Music Awards for production and engineering. Relocated to Los Angeles in the early 2000s and working primarily as a studio mix engineer, Alex also mixed front of house around the world for Pharrell Williams and Nerd, N-E-R-D. How do you guys say it, Nerd or N-E-R-D?
It depends on how much time we have.
Right. Okay. Fair enough. Nerd. Alex jumped to the, it says here, Alex jumped to the other side of the glass. I'm going to say you jumped to the other side of the register.
Oh, okay.
Potentially, to venture into sales and manufacturing too, as a sales consultant for Vintage King and as vice president of Slate Digital, where he created and developed the Raven DAW controller. Very cool thing. A breakthrough in tactile control for virtual production, for visual production, really, Later, Alex launched an amazing business and site called Audio Test Kitchen. Audio Test Kitchen. It's an online platform that provides unbiased microphone and audio gear comparisons, helping users make informed decisions without the need to test hardware in person. There's over 300 microphones in the library there that you can go just click on, compare, voice, drums, other instruments on each mic and hear what it's going to sound like if you're curious about going to get one of these and you're wondering what it sounds like. Good for podcasts. If I'm like, what does my voice sound like in a, I don't know if we'll get into that, but I don't know if you can upload your own voice or anything, but you can definitely hear voices, and decide which mic you like the sound of. This extensive experience in all aspects of the industry gives Alex a unique perspective on telling the stories of the pro audio brands that he represents in his marketing with Sound Vision Works, a new company now in Los Angeles. So we're going to talk about that as well and find out. And then you're also working with I don't know if I mentioned it right here, but you've worked with Apogee, Paul Wolf Design and Fix Audio Design. And
I forgot to mention Apogee because I left Apogee like 3 months ago.
Yeah.
And, the portions of the bio that AI wrote that we edited out, I think Apogee was in there. But oops, we forgot to include them. Right, Apogee was amazing for like a year. There are lots of cool stories to tell there, like life-changing experiences.
Yeah,
Super
I think
cool.
the last time I saw you probably was out at NAMM, and you guys were hosting an incredible party.
Yes.
Was that Apogee's headquarters right there?
Apogee's headquarters is co-located with Bob Clearmountain's recording studio, not to be confused with his humble home mixing studio where he has like a 70-channel SSL, 4000G. Right. So, but right there at Apogee's headquarters, in the same building on the other side, Bob saw some empty warehouse space like 15 years ago when they moved in, and said to his wife, Betty, who owns Apogee and who has been the founder and co-owner and CEO of Apogee for 39 years. So they're coming up on their 40th anniversary next year.
They got the coolest couple name ever, Betty and Bob.
Bob and Betty, Betty and Bob. And they're just I call them the audio industry power couple. Because, Apogee pretty invented invented the audio interface.
Yeah, I remember the so I remember it was like a long skinny DAC or ADC,
right?
That you'd have to choose which one you needed to, right?
Right. Do you want to just record in, analog to digital? Oh, well, you need another one to come out digital to analog. So Betty and Apogee are the founding point of origin for digital to analog conversion, and then ultimately audio interfaces for the home studio. And Bob Clearmountain, Betty's husband, is the point of origin for modern record mixing as we know it. He is the one that everyone credits as inventing the role of mix engineer. So, being around a place like that and people like that, and then kind of being able to get exposed to the network of people that they know from this incredible lifelong journey that they've already had, that they continue to have. These folks they're like a generation older than you and I, and they are nonstop, unstoppable, like schedule packed, tighter than
they
ours.
like it that way.
It's like what label is calling, where is Bob flying to mix so-and-so, like the Foo Fighters in London, or doing, mixing a band on Saturday Night Live, or mixing the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame live broadcast. And he gets calls still from Bob, Elton John would like you to mix him his set at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And Betty has day to day. I'm waxing poetic about my former employer Apogee, but they're just so
good, cool people.
Yeah, and I'd admired them for so long. And the way that I got into Apogee was, I think, just by hanging around. So over the years, so Apogee, as you mentioned, Lij, has these parties on occasion. One of their most notorious is the annual pre-NAMM party. So one day before NAMM, they invite all their international distributors from around the world. So they have meetings over the course of the day. But then in the evening, it's like folks like you and me. And I think I probably had been to an Apogee Christmas party or two or more through when I used to work for Vintage King. And they're just they have this, the office and Bob's studio I'm describing as a point of community in Los Angeles. they open their doors to so many people. Like they'll bring in, Bob's studio has an incredible vintage Neve 8068, one of my favorite consoles. I recorded on the sister console of that 8068 at a place called Pachyderm in Minnesota. Made a bunch of records there.
Pachyderm was. I never got to work there, but I remember learning about it because that's where Steve was recording In Utero. Steve Albini took Nirvana there.
Right. And that 8068 is what tracked that Nirvana record. And I started working there like within a few months or years right after In Utero was made there. I made maybe half a dozen records in that room. Also beautiful room, studio out in the middle of like on a grassy hillside in the woods in Minnesota.
Beautiful. And so the room was, the room sound on In Utero was a big deal, Yeah,
and what I learned about that, because that room didn't have a huge decay time, but it was pretty big and very even sounding, like not a lot of parallel surfaces, lots of wood, lots of glass, big picture windows looking out at the hillside and the wild turkeys walking by. But I learned that Steve Albini's trick to that room sound was to run the room mics through an Eventide like H3000 on the way to tape, adding a 10 millisecond delay on both mics. So he got more distance, more perceived size to that room.
Yep. I learned that trick from him. He would take, at least when he was recording with us, he would take the drum mics and there'd be a pair of Altec 150s down on the floor in front of the drum kit, sort of to the left and right, if you're almost like a 30 degree out from or 60 degree out from where you were sitting at the drums on the floor. And then he'd even take tape and he'd tape the diaphragm down a little bit lower so they get even closer to the floor. And then, like you said, one of them would maybe get a 20 millisecond delay on the left side, and then the right would maybe get like a 24 millisecond delay.
How far from the kit were those two mics?
Just like 2-3 feet in front of the kit, maybe something like that. Not that far out.
That's one of my favorite spots too. I don't know where I first picked it up from. I've done the tape microphone to the wall. I used to do that at Pachyderm. There's these great. There's a somewhat lesser known vintage Neumann tube mic called a CMV 563.
Yeah,
and it was a interchangeable capsule system. You could screw on a cardioid on a bayonet, and then there was a figure 8, and the Omni capsule was called the button capsule, and it just looked like a half dome, and you'd screw that on, and not only was it an Omni, but it just so happened to have this like 10 dB rise in the treble starting, I don't know, around like 6K or something, and so you get this incredible like sort of natural sounding treble lift, high frequency lift, and so you could record like beautiful acoustic guitars, pianos, vocals in the right scenario, room sounds if you wanted that brightness. So at Pachyderm, I would put the CMV 563s with I think it was the MK55 or something like that button capsule, put them on the tallest Atlas stands, have the Atlas stands leaning against the back wall of Pachyderm, probably similar to where Steve Albini put the mics. Yeah. And then I would, we'd get up on a ladder or something, then tape them or maybe we just leaned them with enough pressure there and just told everybody to avoid those stands.
Yeah.
So that we would essentially get that same effect that Albini was getting with the floor mics, but it was on the wall, the back wall. So it was like as far away as possible from the kit.
Yeah, I love it. So now that we're doing the video podcast too, like there's an opportunity to sort of like, explain with like the air dance and the hand gestures and everything. So Rockstars, you're probably seeing it. Like Alex is he's a
I'm a long
formidable dude. So his hand gestures are showing up in my camera too. So you may see some of that. So you'll get double explanations visual there. And if you're listening on the podcast player, in your car, know that we're now on YouTube. So come on over and watch the video too.
Yes, absolutely. See what's going on. So speaking of, that used to be, this is such a great topic that I used to be so embarrassed about how long my limbs are. And there was this moment where I was doing live sound.
Until you started boxing.
Yeah, right. And then they didn't know what hit them. I was doing live sound and we were going to do a recording, and I came to the backstage to just let the artist know we were about ready to go. This is back in Minnesota, an artist called Story Hill acoustic duo. And I just had to I went back to their green room and had to kick everybody out. So like, everybody leave these guys alone now. We're about to, let's let them get prepped, and we're about to, get ready to go do this concert, record the show. And apparently, like, the way that I came back to the stage and I like kind of waved my arms broadly, which was just kind of normal for me. But I was like, okay, everybody, time to go,
great,
time
yeah.
to get it. Oh yeah.
It was just like totally just,
Yeah.
you just take over.
They're
You just be
beyond
like,
the frame.
okay, that's enough for you, Lij. That's enough for you, Alex.
There we go.
Give the rock stars
yeah.
a sense of the space in here, right?
So anyway,
Awesome.
a friend of mine mocked me for, not mocked me, but just like what do you call it when someone like mimics back to you? Like, it was kind of like friendly mocking. And I was embarrassed by that for like a couple of decades. And then I don't know what happened, but like at some point after I turned 40, I started to, all the things I was really embarrassed about, especially about my body, like just my lankiness and like my big hips and my tiny torso and my incredibly long legs and big feet. Like, I started to really embrace it and go like,
right.
well, that's what makes me unique. That's what
Become a
makes
feature,
me stand out. It's like, right. It's not a
bug, it's a feature.
It's a feature. So
Yeah.
my physical features, what am I going to do? What am I going to do?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's smart, that's smart thinking. I mean, it does take us a minute to sort of sometimes really get comfortable with who we are. I mean, I remember, getting in trouble in high school, freshman and sophomore year, and for breaking rules, and like it was the silliest thing ever. Like I got busted in boarding school because my friends all wanted to smoke. We were all smoking cigarettes together and sneaking off to go do it.
By the way, I'll never admit to any like smoking or drugs on camera or a microphone, just in case the insurance companies are listening.
Yeah.
Because I didn't do any of those things. But if anyone does admit that, like in a public space, you never know. Like what?
That's true. That's true. You never know.
You can
when
have
you're,
someone like scrape every podcast you've ever done, learn all the things that like someday someone might hold against you. I mean, your insurance rates could go up, Liz. You got to be careful.
That's true. I have to get insurance first. No, just kidding. But like, so, I think I got in trouble because I was like, oh, I heard you could, smoke peanut skins or something like that. So I saved them. My mom had sent me some. And then I get in trouble for that. And then like, I'm the laughing stock on the school bus. And then, that kind of stuff like totally bothered me for years. It took a long time before I could even tell that story. Now, of course, I look back and I'm like, that's funny as shit, It's like great. It's better to be, unique in your story than just be like everybody else.
Yes.
Well, let's see. So cool. First off, I just realized I was actually reading the wrong intro. So that's probably why I forgot to mention a couple of things.
Oh, really? No.
I know. I just pulled up the wrong browser tab is what I did.
Oh, is that the one I sent you last night though?
Yeah. You sent me the right one and I had to edit it all together. And I had one that was
It sounded
perfect.
right to me.
So the thing I didn't mention, Rockstars, is if you want to hear Alex's whole backstory, RSR494 is where we went through all that stuff.
Yeah, that's like 5 years ago.
It was like 2019, I think. That's when we met too. So Alex introduced me to oat milk.
And it's changed your life, right?
It's changed my life. Now I'm about ready to quit oat milk. So, it's, you go through phases, but we were in New York City for AES in 2019 and hanging out with Chris Salim, and he was like from Mixdown Online, and he was like, hey, I got this cool new dude. We need to go meet him. We're meeting him for coffee. And I was like, oh yeah, cool. All right. And, so we show up and we met you, and then you were like, yeah, dude, the oat milk's all the rage now. We got to go find a coffee shop that has oat milk in it. Cause that was a rare find at that point.
We went to a really great coffee place, and that's something that you and I have in common. I think a lot of recording people have like some kind of food fetish, coffee or wine or micro brews or, some particular nutritional approach. I think it's great. It's great. So I'm definitely a coffee person. But.
I mean, I go through phases of whether I'm actually spending the money on fancy coffee for the studio. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I'm like, we got the best in here. And sometimes I'm like, you know what? That $2 brick of coffee at Aldi's looks like it's going to be just fine. And I'll rock that for a minute. But like when I go out for coffee, it just makes going out to the coffee shop that much more special. Go get the good stuff,
Yes.
Alex is like, man, I'm glad I didn't ask for a coffee just before the interview.
Well, I did bring you like a less than half used bag of coffee.
That's true.
To
You
enjoy
did.
it. And I'm glad you could have a
We'll
place
make
to
an
put it to use
espresso.
in the studio.
On the break. Well, so tell us a little bit about what's going on with you, man. What is new? You've got a new startup, Sound Vision Works.
Yeah, and so you and I, and maybe a bit of AI, we won't admit that, whether that or not that's true, wrote my bio intro. No, really, you sent me a draft. Thank you so much. And I thought you encapsulated a bunch of stuff, but you didn't even know that I have a new gig.
I didn't. No, not yet.
Yeah, and I just thought, like, well, what would be interesting? What would be compelling to people, to your audience, to the folks out there? Hello. And
You can call them the rock stars.
The rock stars, yeah.
Their first
It's
name.
interesting. Like I don't know. There's got to be like a best way, or maybe just a way that I'm comfortable talking to the people listening. Because like when I'm listening to your podcast, Lij, I'm an individual. I know I'm a part of a collective.
Yeah.
I am one of the rock stars. If I'm listening to Matt Boudreau's podcast, I am part of his audience, right? So like as the host or as the guest, how do you address your rock stars? How do you address your audience without making them feel like they're just part of a crowd? They are, like.
I got an answer for you.
Okay.
I have no idea, man.
Right.
I have no idea. I think it's more fun to describe than to say, our listeners is just so
Right.
generic. So I just I chose the over the top version initially, where I'm just
I like
rock
it.
stars,
Might as well, because there is no perfect way. There's another podcast, Smartless.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Smart-
That's a very popular one.
And when they do like their
What do they call
commercial
them? Smarty
breaks,
pantses?
they should. I
Yeah.
don't know if they do yet. But they say, "Hell, dear listener." But I don't know if that's. I think that when Jason Bateman says that with his little smirk, I don't feel like personally spoken to. But I just want
He's good though. Jason Bateman's great. Ozark
my favorites.
was a lot of fun.
It's my goal that the person who is listening to Recording Studio Rockstars right now, yes, you with your headphones on, with your AirPods in, with your earbuds, perhaps on your little smart speaker, I just want you to know I'm speaking to you. Lij is speaking to you.
That's
We're just
right.
speaking to you individually.
I'm looking at you right
And
now.
I'm looking at you.
Don't wave your hands, or else they won't see me looking at them. Native Instruments introduces the new Complete 15 bundle, featuring Contact 8, offering versatile synths, sampled instruments, and innovative effects. Perfect for creating everything from emotional scores to dance floor grooves. Contact 8 includes exciting new creative tools like chords and phrases for inspiration, the Leap tool for dynamic looping, and Conflux, a hybrid instrument blending organic and synth sounds. The Complete 15 bundle also includes updated Massive X and Guitar Rig 7 Pro and AI-enhanced Isotope Ozone 11. Use the code ROCK10 for 10% off at nativeinstruments.com. Okay, cool. Well, so you've done a ton of stuff, man. I mean, of course, you started out in the studio. In fact, when I was going back and just sort of like poking around on YouTube to see what I found recently, I stumbled on a video from like 2003 where you're in a local TV station. You got long hair and you're just kicked back looking like a rock star, like you still are. But it also reminded me, I'm like, wow, we were, 2003. I remember 2003. That was a while ago, but we've all had some experiences since then. We've matured and aged in our audio journey. But you were talking about, I think they were interviewing you about somebody who was a contestant on American Idol, and you had a lot to say, and it was just cool to see that you've had this journey that started out in music production, in a studio, winning awards for production up in Minneapolis. And then you've worked with a number of different companies. Vintage King, you were sort of an expert on all the gear there initially at one point too.
And so back to the bio, that I wanted to think about like a theme of what we could talk about and what would be maybe valuable to each listener. And I think that the theme in my career is risk and reinvention.
Yeah.
And I've been really reflecting lately on reinvention because I was, as we were speaking about, if that part doesn't get edited out, I was at Apogee for a year, and just a year, and then I bailed, and I'm doing something completely different. And I started looking at like, what is am I like commitment phobic? What is going on here? Because I've reinvented myself so many times, and I wanted to. So now I'm in my early 50s, and I wanted anybody who just has any question marks in their head about like their career path, or when to know it's the right moment to make a change or whatever. Like, it might be interesting to hear the examples of like the ways that I've kind of bounced around from.
Yeah, let's hear that for sure. I mean, I think that reinventing is an important part of what we do, because I've always said when you choose to do this audio stuff, based on my experience, you have to be ready to pivot all the time and try this and that and make stuff up and, have a few different irons in the fire, so to speak. So I think that's an important part of surviving in this world. Even the tech just changes underneath us. So what are some examples for you of that? I mean, like what tempted you to even step out of the Minneapolis studio and make a first move? Was it the move to LA when like I'm ready to go?
Yeah,
see the bright lights.
That was at a time. I think it's such a huge decision about where a person goes to college, because it becomes the basis of your network.
Right.
And it just so happened that I went to school in Minnesota, about an hour south of the Twin Cities of Minneapolis and St. Paul. And I just
where in St. Paul were you?
So the school was an hour south of Minneapolis.
Oh, okay,
St. Paul,
sorry.
yeah. And then I ended up living in Minneapolis after college. But I kind of lucked into this group of incredible musicians in college. My roommate and then all my friends down the hall formed a band. At the time was called Shark Sandwich. We can make jokes about that from Spinal Tap. They eventually, and so I did my first live sound work for them. I did my very first recording with them in our campus nightclub on a PV mixer, with a DOD digital crappy reverb and a cassette deck. And to this day, I cannot wait to like remaster that, or like, because I have a digitized version of the cassette. Or now you can do stem separation, because it is such a like the bones of like a great
Let's do it right
recording.
now. We'll do it live on the show.
We should totally remix that, but I can't. That's a whole thing I want to do, is actually go back and remix my '90s catalog of like all these studios I was in, where like I didn't really have like the precision EQs I needed. Really, the problem with all my old recordings is that my ears were not developed. And so my ear now, even though, my hearing probably, it trails off after 13K, I have some tinnitus and all that sort of thing.
Normal stuff.
My hearing acuity and my decision making and my understanding of what's going on and like what I want to go for is so much farther developed than it ever was when I was like really in the heart of my record making career. So I'm like, man, I just want to go back and remix all that stuff. But so back in my college days, I got hooked in with a whole crew of incredible musicians who eventually got signed to some record label, Capitol or Sony or something like that. Made a bunch of records in Minneapolis, but really I had set my sights on, I wanted to be Bob Clearmountain. I really did. And so, and pre-internet, it was like, who was in Mix magazine every month or a few times a year was, Bob Clearmountain and, some Lord Alges and just like, George Massenburg. And like, I really, really, and so I think I also associated that kind of opportunity with the West Coast or like New York. And so eventually I'll just say that I wished I had had like a mentor in Minnesota that could have just like said, stupid, you want that Bob Clearmountain sound? You got to mix through a SSL bus compressor. You got to do this. You got to use more reverb, whatever.
Yeah, it was hard to know those things back then too.
It was.
You needed somebody to tell you, or you needed to just stumble on it in a magazine. It's probably easier to find out now, although it's also more challenging to like filter out the noise, because there's so much information.
Yeah. Easy to try a lot of things and then save as and try another thing. So I eventually ended up in LA and my client base was still a lot of Minnesota people, and I got one. So this is so weird. Like, I think that the third like adjective I would use in my first sentence of my bio is a career of risk, reinvention, and like being being afraid, and just like I think I've chickened out a few times when I wished I wouldn't have. And if there's anything that if I could get the folks who are listening to do any one thing, it is simply, yes, you're going to be scared, but just do it anyway. Figure out some way to like not have the consequences really. They can mean something. They can sting. The if you fail, if you get hurt, if someone says no, it's gonna sting, it's gonna hurt, whatever. But you will go on. That's the thing. It's like, and the people who care about you and love you, and the people who matter, will continue to.
Right.
And so I think I've made enough times in my where I had a choice to, where I really, looking back, should have just forged ahead and done the scary thing. I somehow...
You think sometimes it was a feeling of like you had already started to take the risk, but then you didn't stick it through?
Yeah.
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 I think that's a hard thing to do. Immediately what comes to mind to me is the desire to have a band and play shows, and I might get something going and then play one show, but then just kind of drop it after that and not book a follow-up show, not actually like level it up and get it going.
And there's always like a projection we make, like, oh, what if not enough people show up? And I tend to like be like a bit of an all or nothing thinker. Like when I launched Audio Test Kitchen, our goal was to
you guys weren't messing around when you launched that.
Oh my God, not at all. Like in so many ways. And one of our goals on a kind of business success level was to get venture capital backing, 10 exit, and become this like, tens of millions of dollars a year company. And I still believe that vision is possible, but like what it did was because there were opportunities to like do just the next step sort of thing that I skipped because it wasn't a big enough move, because I had set it up in my mind that it had to be on such a big scale. Like the next move had to have a return on a large scale, that if I felt I couldn't achieve that, that next move wouldn't achieve that, then I would not do any move. I wouldn't make any move next.
Yeah.
And that is just so crippling. And that's what I think, that if I could rewrite my own history, I would just do the next best move. I would absolutely go for incremental progress. Before we started recording, you mentioned in the context of even making and executing, producing your podcast, you put it, if I'm capturing this correctly, said, I'm just trying to get 1% better, each time or each increment. And that's great, because it allows you to start where you are, and it allows you to, you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be perfect ever. But like it's so rewarding to feel progress, to feel improvement, and it makes it so much more human and achievable, and also it doesn't prevent you from starting.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So that concept, I probably learned that through Tim Ferriss or something, talking about Olympic champions. This concept of to become a champion at an Olympic level, all you need to do is just keep improving what you do by 1% each time, and then eventually you get there. And in a marathon training, that was a big deal for me. That was the first probably really big personal goal that I ever made. There's lots of examples of big personal goals, but the marathon was like, okay, I'm going to do something I've never done before. I decided I was going to run a marathon, and then to pile on top of that, it's like, oh, and I'm going to run it barefoot. So I'm like, do all these things that are way outside of the reach at first. But what I learned from that was choosing a training program that took 4 months. It's like, okay, over this 4 months, all you got to do is hit these targets every day of the week, and then incrementally work your way up. And yeah, some of those increments were pretty ass kicking, especially the long Saturday runs, and especially the mornings where you're like, I don't want to go do this right now, or it's raining or whatever. But by keeping up with that, it was amazing to me personally is like I get to the, it actually the first year, the first marathon I was training for, I actually on a 17-mile run realized I was like, I can't do this on a training run. And I was like, I think I need to just dial it back. And the choices are full marathon or half marathon, right?
Oh.
There wasn't like a 9/10 of a marathon choice. So I was like, all right, I'm going to do the half. And so so I did that. And it's easy to see stuff like that. That to me, that's an example for me of like, you see that and you're like, man, that's not the marathon. That's like a half a marathon or whatever. And so it's easy to feel like you're not achieving your goal. But once I accepted it and did it and I finished it, I'm like, holy shit, man, I just ran 13 miles. I just did a full half marathon barefoot for the first time, And then the next year I was able to do the full. So like, to me, it's that idea of just do the little bits and set your goal here, but be willing to bring your goal back when you need to, because still the recessed goal is still a lot more than doing nothing, where you started.
I've been doing this app called Better Me. You and I talk about, exercise and
is that the nemesis app to Despicable Me?
It doesn't have as good a soundtrack. Pharrell didn't do it. It's funny that this exact same music plays every time. No matter the workout, there's like 3 tracks they're like the gym techno tracks, right. Like lots of synths and like exactly. And I'm like, it's not the kind of music I would ever intentionally turn on for enjoyment, but like it actually kind of works when you're in the gym mode. So
no EDM phase for you, no inner DJ that's been wanting to come out.
I have to admit that I think if I had a rig, I would probably just be playing with it all the time.
Yeah, just mixing your own parties at night.
Bass drops.
Yeah, exactly. You were playing me that Beyonce track down in the studio.
Yeah.
I just got to take Alex down to the toy box. He hadn't seen the Carl Tats room since we had done that. And he was like, dude, here's your bass reference track.
That's right. And this track called Partition, it has, if you end up listening to it, there's 2 versions you'll find on the streaming services. And the one that you want to listen to has Beyonce. It's like, it starts out it sounds like they're at a concert and Beyonce's like talking on the mic, but then it switches over to the studio track. So that's the correct one. And Mike Peacock, who's, a lot of us know from Sweetwater, a friend of mine, that's his like speaker testing track. And since Sound Vision Works is distributing and representing KS Digital speakers out of Germany here in the US, at AES, Mike came up and played this Beyonce track, Partition. He said, "This is my speaker testing track." And I was like, "Mike, this is like the perfect track." He's like, "Well, I've sold a lot of speakers.
I sold a lot of speakers with this track. That's pretty cool."
So true. So yeah, you got to check it out because the bass drop goes like all the way down.
It goes all the way down.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that a little bit more. So Sound Vision Works, if I'm saying that right?
You are.
Yeah. So what is it? So this is a new thing that you guys are.
Sound Vision Works is a boutique marketing and distribution agency, US based, LA based. It comes from a few people in the industry who've been doing it for a while, kind of experts in their own fields. And we've come together. Some have called us a super group.
Nice, the super group.
Dream team, Avengers. I wouldn't ever say that. That would sound too self-important. But really, so it was founded by one of my oldest friends in LA, Jeff Ehrenberg, who was maybe like the 3rd employee of Vintage King ever, and was the first employee of Vintage King in California. He built Vintage King's LA showroom. He conceptualized it. He built it. And then a few years ago broke off and made his own like high touch, white glove pro audio dealership called Providence Sound and Vision. And then because he's had such a long relationship with
as in Providence, Rhode Island?
Providence?
Or just like the providence of...
The providence of... What does providence even mean?
That's a good question.
The providence of things.
Hey, Google.
That's right. Well,
Drop a comment in.
That's
Give us your definition of just chat GPT, just AI it and drop it in the comments.
That's
Rockstar.
right. That's right. So he has had such a long relationship with manufacturers, encountering. It's such a typical story that, let's take, for example, I'm going to pick on our friend Steve Jackson of Pultec. Incredible feat of engineering to recreate Pultecs as if they and be able to produce a Pultec that is the same as if it were new coming off the production line, 50 years ago, whatever.
That's hard to do.
That's really hard to do. And so, but is Steve an expert in marketing? Is he an expert in sales? So where Sound Vision Works comes in is to help these incredibly brilliant manufacturers, gear creators, designers, do the things that will help them get their story out, get their products out there. So I'm VP of marketing. I'm helping tell these companies' stories, helping you really just make connections, because whether it's Audio Test Kitchen or anything, and I am a firm believer that I believe in this ecosystem of gear that is created for people to create with, right? And
right.
I honor so much the creative process of people like Paul Wolf, people like Steve Jackson, Steve Jackson of Pultec, the Ivana Manleys of the world, the Dave Durs of the world.
Yeah, you're listing a group of people who have just, in the same way that some of us feel, or many of us might feel that, you, Rockstar, might feel that you've dedicated your life to making a great record. You're listing a group of people that might have done a version of that as well, but also have dedicated their life to just making great tools for the studio. Are you recording your own music or other people's music in your studio, but you're having trouble figuring out how to get your mixes to sound great? Do they sound weak and distant or lack punch and clarity? Well, I've got a gift for you to help you take your mixes from sounding like basement demos to sounding a lot more like professional mixes. And it's my free course called Mix Master Bundle. This course will show you how to get pro sounding mixes from your home studio with free and stock plugins in Pro Tools. And the best part is, these mixing techniques will work for you in any DAW, whether you're in Logic, Cubase, PreSonus Studio One, Reaper, or anything you can think of. Are you ready to make your best record ever? Then go to mixmasterbundle.com to get started for free now, and you can find the clickable link in the show notes of this episode.
I call their gear their songs, their records. I use the same analogy you just did. And so that's what they pour their creativity into. And it is to serve our creativity as engineers, as audio creators, as musicians. So I have this saying, and it comes out a bit controversial, but go with it for a second. People don't love music. People love recordings. If you think about it, 99.9 infinitesimal % of people will never have Taylor Swift sitting in front of them singing and playing her song.
Mm-hmm.
They're not falling in love with that. They're falling in love with the results of the thoughtful capturing and constructing of these performances as captured and only made possible because they can be captured and stored and manipulated by all this equipment and delivered through various services. So it's really that ecosystem of the gear that makes it possible to create in these ways with audio. That is the art that people around the world fall in love with. It is more than a song, and it's people. So that's why I say people don't love music. People love recordings.
Yeah. So of course, somebody in a Nashville song lover would say, no, they love the song in there, but it's you don't get to hear the song without the craft of recording it really well, and that's what people experience is a well crafted recording of something, hopefully. And sometimes the craft of that is the textural part, using the right microphones and the right gear. Sometimes the craft of that is the microphones play second role to the moment and capturing the moment really effectively. But all of those all glue together, like great tools in the studio also don't get in the way and let you capture a moment when it happens, right?
And I would argue that, let's say we took a James Taylor song in a vacuum and just said, hey, it's just as likely that if the world would have fallen in love with that song if it was just a mic in a room with him playing that song and singing it by himself, right? Because it's the song. It's like Fire and Rain. That is just, you take that song in any form and it's absolutely brilliant. But I believe that is the form of the recording that, because of the textures, because of the mood it sets, because of the intentionality about the decisions that were made in editing and performing, in blending, that is the vehicle that opened people's hearts to hear that song, want to hear it over and over and let it into their lives. So if in the future they hear James Taylor doing a live version of that song and it's just him and a guitar and it's on a stage somewhere in like the woods in Aspen, Colorado, it's really, and it's touching people's hearts, it's because they had already been opened years prior to the original recording. And as they're hearing James sing that song in a different form, they are referencing the original and the emotions that it brought out.
Okay, right. You mean like if your buddy's playing you a version of the song, you're remembering your original.
That's right.
Feeling of the original.
It's kind of like there was a time when MTV had this series called Unplugged, and you would get bands like Nirvana playing unplugged versions, so like kind of no electric instruments were allowed, and Dave Grohl played like with blast sticks and brushes.
And guess who put the microphones on them and recorded them? No, Bob Clearmountain.
Bob Clearmountain?
Yeah, he did MTV Unplugged, the Nirvana sessions.
Are you kidding me?
That was, believe it or not, so that rewinds to the 90s when it's all brand new to me and I'm discovering all these people. And that was my introduction to Bob Clearmountain.
That is mind-blowing.
It was a Mix Magazine article. He put the 441 on Kurt's acoustic guitar. And I was like, and it went through an API mic pre. I remember that specifically, the AKG 441. And I was like, wow, that's a great sound. And then I went and discovered other things that he had done. And then that's what I got. Tattoo You, the Rolling Stones.
Yeah.
And listened to that and heard the opening of Start Me Up where the reverb and the snare goes bong.
Yes.
And then fast forward 25 years or more than that, 30 years. And I had Bob on the podcast and I got to ask him that question about cranking up the reverb on that first snare hit.
Oh, I'm surprised I missed that credit. Like when you walk around the halls of Apogee, they don't need to buy any posters or artwork because the walls are decorated with all of his gold records and his Grammys and his platinum records and signed photos from bands, and I guess I've yet to run into that wing of the studio or the office where there's the Nirvana Unplugged credit. That's so cool. So in that experience, I think as people, one of the things that made MTV Unplugged so fascinating and so successful was that it really just tickled a part of people's brains where they were just constantly drawing the connection and association with the original song that had busted into their brains, busted into their hearts and blown the doors open. And it's such a fun, that's probably why we like covers by artists too. Anyway, so that's a whole other.
Well, that hit home for me doing the Bonnaroo Hay Bale studio. So for 15 years, I did the backstage studio at Bonnaroo, which is a huge festival just south of Nashville, in June every year. And we would set up a studio inside a hay bale. And I kept trying to level up the studio. I'm like, I'm going to provide the greatest studio ever. And we're going to be able to have a whole band come in. We're going to get this great sound on a band performing their song. And I did that a number of times and it was a lot of fun, but it was a kind of almost a tough lesson for me to learn that why wasn't the radio getting as excited about that? And the reason I learned is because they've already got a great recording of the song with the band performing it like the record. The thing that's interesting is what you described, which is the unusual version of the song, the simplified one, the acoustic one. Not all songs translate to acoustic in a great way, but even that could be super interesting to people. So it was an interesting thing for me to learn along that way too.
Sometimes when I'm having a conversation, this context, Lij, I can tend to want to just start going down my own path and talk about subjects, but I want to be respectful to the things that you want to talk about. I have some stuff on my mind.
I always derail people, so you just put us back on the track.
Okay, so I wanted to talk a little bit about my time at Slate.
Yeah.
There's a couple of important themes here, and it's interesting and entertaining to hear people talk on a podcast, but I do want to deliver something that might help someone and be of value to someone's career, their decision making. So I'll talk a little bit about my time at Slate. A few important things there. One, it was around 2011, and I was coming out of one of the worst times in my life. I had just gotten divorced, and my life had pretty much fallen apart. My career wasn't going great. There were almost no positive messages in my life. But I was writing for Pro Audio Review. So at the time, a print magazine. Eventually, they were acquired by the same people who run Pro Sound News, and now they've merged with Mix Magazine. They have Mix Online. So that whole group, and I had an incredible editor, Strother Bullens. Frank Wells was part of the magazine at that time. Lynn Fuston was writing for them.
Yeah, I know Lynn.
Yeah, so it was a great outlet for me, and my job was to review gear, and one of the things I got to review, it was my editor Strother's idea to review an entire studio. So it was called a facility review, and he sent me out to, I think it was North Carolina, to review this studio, and I'm spacing on the name at the moment. And what happened was it landed me on the cover of the magazine. Pro Audio Review had never put a human being on the cover of their magazine up until that point. Wow. That wasn't their thing. It was always gear.
This was when you still looked like you look like a cool rocker today too. But did you have the long hair and all that back then?
Almost identical to what it is now, dude. You're just telling me that my hair doesn't look cool right
No, your hair does look cool. I just enjoyed seeing the long hair. I got the long hair, short hair, medium hair versions too.
I definitely need a haircut.
No, you don't, dude. Your hair looks great. Your hair looks fabulous.
I don't care how it looks. That's not why I feel valued.
It's better to look good than to feel good. Speaking of SNL, that was SNL, wasn't it?
Yeah. Oh man, so many things.
Okay, cool. So
there I was on the cover of this magazine. So this is going to make sense in a second. That was the AES issue. I show up at AES. I'm working for Vintage King. I loved what I learned at Vintage King, but it was incredibly painful because here I was I thought of myself as an expert recording engineer, very talented, and yet I was not doing what I loved every day. I was helping other people do what they love every day as a sales consultant. But then there I was at AES, and I was at this party at Joel Hamilton's G Street studio in Brooklyn, or Studio G in Brooklyn, and Stephen Slate was hosting the party. He had a product on the cover of Sound on Sound magazine, and I was like, I've always wanted to talk to this guy. I hadn't met him yet.
What was Stephen's focus in 2011?
See, he was known for the drum library, and he had just launched one of his first plugins. I think it was FGX Mastering.
What about, so Trigger was already happening?
It might have been pre-Trigger. It was around that time. So he definitely had the drums, and he was just kind of dipping his toes into plugins.
Yeah, and I remember getting into FGX Mastering plugin, the tape machine, virtual tape machine, virtual mix console.
Yep, tape machine was developed while I was at Slate. So Stephen kind of had this reputation, and he was kind of was and still is kind of a polarizing guy, kind of love him or hate him sort of thing. And I just wanted to give, and what I love about that actually, so just as a sidebar, who cares if everybody loves you? That has stopped me so many times. I'll only do something if I can sort of be guaranteed that everyone will like it. Sometimes it's important. It's if you make something that's this, a piece of software, we answered all the, our beta testers, they pointed out all the flaws, we fixed all the flaws. That's a good time to make sure everyone's happy.
Right.
But when it comes to creative things, art, your own particular vision, for example, we Ben over at Third Man Records gave his old friend Dante is my colleague at Sound Vision Works. They were in bands together in Detroit. They were hanging out with Jack White all the time. So Ben now he pretty much built the Third Man Records world.
Which is a cool spot over there.
Insane. So we got the behind the scenes tour. Go ahead.
Rockstars, if you're ever in Nashville, make a trip over to Third Man Records. It's like a little museum. It's a shop. You can go cut a record right there in a vinyl booth you put your dollar in or whatever, and it spits out a little
wax cylinder.
Yeah.
Which you can play at home in your car on the way home.
No, actually it's vinyl. But yeah, it's just cool stuff. So continue. And they host shows there too.
This place is so much bigger than meets the eye. There's a massive warehouse. They have like tens of thousands of archival bits of like music history, not just from Jack White and the White Stripes and the Raconteurs, but from all these other artists that are on their label, etc. But really what it is a manifestation. They have 3 locations. They have the Nashville, they've got Detroit, they've got London. And it's all because I'll just, there's a lot more to this, but there's all because at the heart of it, at the source of it, one guy, Jack White, has a very particular vision, a singular vision that he did not compromise.
Right.
He just decided that his vision and what he wanted to build and what he continues to do, he stays true to, whatever the consequence, and that has paid off for him. And if I could get people out there to do one thing, it is to be more like Jack White. Like, just do your thing. That is what the world needs you to do, and you will be so much happier. You're going to lose friends. You're going to lose, fans. You might confuse family members or what have you for some period of time. But if you just keep going, I think that's the path to happiness. It's probably the path to, financial rewards, whatever, as much as you possibly can. And I think that many, it's not possible for everyone around the world to do that. Not everyone's in the position to do that. But for many Americans, that's kind of like part of what we're able to do. We're, for the most part, we can figure out how to feed ourselves, how to shelter ourselves, basically give ourselves enough of a platform that we have choice in what we do every day. And I would encourage, if I could rewind myself 20, 30 years, I would just say every possible chance, Alex, if you could, just stay true to your vision and don't worry about whether everyone is going to like it, whether everyone is going to like you. So at this moment at the AES show, I see this polarizing figure, Stephen Slate, which a lot of people are like, used car salesman, like blah, 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 snake oil, whatever.
Because he's very bold in his technique and his method of communicating and marketing.
Amazing marketing genius. That might be like his biggest area of genius. His unstoppability is really his main genius. But I suspended disbelief in that moment. I was like, I'm going to, who cares what everybody says? I'm going to go figure out what this guy is about. So I pull out of my backpack the magazine on which I am, how do you say that? I'm on the cover of it.
Emblazoned, on which you are emblazoned.
On which I was emblazoned. And I walked up to him and I said, hey, Stephen, so I'm on the cover of a magazine this month too. And that just was a great icebreaker. And within about 30 seconds, I just got the Stephen vibe. It's like, this guy's super smart. His mouth can barely keep up with the speed of his brain. And we just had a mind meld. And 2 weeks later, I was the vice president of his company.
That's amazing.
So here's my point. Put it out there. Like I was at the end of this divorce. I was feeling as shitty as shit could shit. Sorry, you have to bleep all that out.
No,
we can do that.
It's a rock and roll podcast.
I was feeling fucking shitty. I was one of the lowest points of my life, 2011. But I just went for it. Like, what do I have to lose? And all of a sudden, then, a few weeks later, like I've got my own place. My divorce is settling out. And all of a sudden I went from being hopeless to like, I'm in one of the best spots in the music industry. And then Stephen was working on like a monitor controller, and he's like, what could we make that would replace basically the physical presence of an SSL?
Yeah.
And so we made this giant desk, took it to NAMM. It kind of didn't make sense. Then one day I was like, what would make sense? As our world is transitioning to plugins, it's a world of software. That's music production. Why don't we just make a giant touchscreen so we can have that tactile experience of feeling like we're in touch with our music production tools. So that's how the Raven was born.
That's so cool, dude. I don't know if we talked about that last time, and I don't know if I've really heard that story from you about being there at the birth of that idea.
Yeah. And what was so cool about, and even after I said that idea to Steven, the cool part was like he said, "That's a great idea. Let's do that." And he gave me the latitude, the liberty, the budget to go pursue it. And it was 2 years of crazy R&D like that. Essentially we made a giant iPad for Pro Tools, but the technology didn't exist. It still doesn't exist. It's still the only way to do multi-touch with all these DAWs and et cetera, et cetera. So the product lives on, and I'm super proud of it. So point 2 about being at Slate, it was tough. It was really freaking hard. Oftentimes leaders with like a huge strength in one area, there may be another area which is, deficiency or what have you. And like, it was just a tough environment, and it chewed a lot of us up. It ate us up. And yet, as I look back, I've realized how much I learned and how much stronger it made me, and it really changed who I was.
Amazing. iZotope is truly amazing for mixing and mastering your music, like the new iZotope Plasma plugin featuring flux saturation, which helps you sculpt the harmonics in your sound, enhancing the excitement and clarity of your tracks and mixes. And Ozone, with its built-in mastering assistant, helps you analyze your mix, suggesting all the settings you need for a professionally mastered result based on your chosen style of music and EQ curve, or reference a specific song if you want. Ozone features sophisticated yet simple modules like clarity and impact, low-end focus, stabilizer, imager, exciter, and spectral shaping, along with powerful dynamic EQ, compression, and limiting, allowing you to adjust the settings to your taste so it sounds incredible. And with the magic of master rebalance, you can even manipulate the vocal, bass, and drums separately at the mastering stage. Use the code ROCK10 to get 10% off Plasma, Ozone, RX, or any of the fantastic plugins at iZotope.com. Howdy, rock stars. It's Lij Shaw, and welcome back to the jam session, aka the second half of the show. My guest today is Alex Oana, joining us here at Recording Studio Rockstars HQ.
It's beautiful.
I was trying to call it, we were calling it Podzilla for a minute, and then I was like, let me Google that. And of course, there's something else called Podzilla.
It just doesn't feel very Zilla in here. It feels more Pod Zen.
Pod Zen. Ooh, I like that. That hasn't happened yet.
It's your Zen pod, so it feels very Pod Zen. It's beautiful in here. Like this, it feels like warm and welcoming, and yet modern and very technically capable.
It's very bright.
Just in the right way, though. We've got natural light. We've got...
There was a really good name that Chris Shaw came up with, was Pod Damn It. And of course, there's totally a podcast out there called Pod Damn It.
That's a good one.
I was like, oh, well, what are you going to do? You ready to jam?
I don't know what that is going to entail, I'm game.
I don't either. So one of the thoughts that just occurred to me as we paused there for a minute was, as you're talking about this idea of taking a risk and then feeling like you bailed or jumped ship.
Mm-hmm.
I think sometimes I was thinking about so you have like me, you have an appreciation for trying to stay physically fit and healthy as we get older and everything. Cause I don't know, for me, I just want to keep living and feeling good for a while.
I want to keep getting younger.
There you go. That's what I'm trying to do too. Yes. Here's for that. And I think music hopefully helps. But part of that is like, I just described this marathon running scenario where it's like you set a big goal, you train for it, then I hit the marathon, and then I'm like, well, I don't want it. Monday comes around. I was like, great, I don't have to run Monday, and then you just kind of fall back off of that. And a version of exercise that I do today is one where I'm kind of doing the same thing every night about at 6, and it might be easy to look at that and go, well, you're not making any forward progress. but I think there's value to like kind of maintaining sometimes too.
Huge.
So that was my thought about your comment of like, we feel like we're bailing from something, but maybe you, or maybe people are just really good at the big goal sprint. And then when you get there, maybe part of a strategy is it's okay to just kind of cruise for a while before you make another big goal sprint. And we might identify that as, not doing something that's a big deal. And maybe, it's just a thought.
Okay. Well, since we're theorizing, cause it's so, as my therapist, I think let's explore this path. That could fit in with this idea that, why is it that I change what I do so often? So like I was at Apogee for a year. I was global sales manager. I have never been a global sales manager. I've done sales, but I must have convinced them of something, for them to trust me enough to hire me. But I was learning on the job.
Yeah.
And about 6 months in, maybe it was right around 6 months, I realized very distinctly one day, oh, I've got this. I've got this figured out. And it only was another month or two until I was bored. And I was like, I think I see what all the problems are here to solve.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not interested anymore. And I miss parts of being an Apogee. I miss parts of other things that I, left behind. But I think here's the weird part, Lij. Those first 3 months, those first 6 months were so stressful and like scary to me. And like, I felt like so incapable, and like, how can they even pay me? Like, I am just I don't know what I'm doing. What am I even delivering of value? And then like the second I've got it figured out and it's easy and I'm like, oh man, I could go off and like enjoy my life. I could like have, personal time. I could enjoy my children. That's like the moment where I'm just done. I want to leave.
Yeah.
And so why do I want to exist in fear and stress?
I don't know. I think it somehow taps into that same part of us that, like, for me, I like hooking stuff up. I like building studios and getting things to work. It's that engineer, the tinkerer in us. And there are times where I've looked at it and I've thought, Lij, what's wrong with you? You said, oh, if I just build this cool little home studio zone, then I'm going to make more music. And then you build it and then you don't make the music or whatever it was in that moment. But then I kind of came around where I was like, you know what, maybe it's okay to just like solving difficult puzzles and building things. And it's all right. Maybe we just need to allow ourselves to do that. So, I mean, when you built Audio Test Kitchen, that was a massive idea and a massive puzzle, and figuring all that out.
And so stressful. There's this famous saying in startup world where it's like, you jump off the cliff and build the airplane in free fall. Something like that. Build the airplane on the way down.
Right. Ready, fire, aim.
Yeah. And I mean, when you're in free fall and you don't have it figured out, you don't even know if you're going to make a landing, if you're going to survive. That's what it feels like.
Yeah.
And I don't know why it's hard. I mean, it really, truly is hard. It's disruptive on relationships, and it's actually things like exercise is like the only thing that holds it together for me. Like regular exercise, like I call it my sanity and my vanity. So
and in this place, it's your zenity.
Ooh, podzenity.
Podzenity. I'm writing that one
There's
down.
just writing this shit down. I was never the one who's good at coming up with band names, so I can't believe we even wrote down a couple of like things that I said. Yeah. So I want to, so I've been thinking about, okay, so what is Alex's special recipe for like career happiness? So I think it's got to be that right mixture of like, I do something that's really hard. I often like doing something that's unprecedented, like The Raven had never been done. Audio Test Kitchen had never been done. There's no roadmap. It's the most scary thing. Mm-hmm. There's no blueprint. There's not even like a revenue model. And so there's a few different places I could go here, but one of the
I
things
like your analogy of free falling and not knowing how you're going to save yourself before you hit the ground.
Yeah. The ground is coming. We know, will I smack it? So, and as I've been getting this question, so 5 years ago, like Audio Test Kitchen was maybe just born, I think.
Yeah.
And when I was on the podcast the first time.
It parallels the life cycle of oat milk.
5 years. Even though it says like, a couple of months, you've do you have one in the?
No, I don't mean like an individual container, but I mean like, the arrival of oat milk and then it becomes ubiquitous,
I'm so glad I said no to when you offered me an oat milk latte earlier, because you were going to give me the 5-year-old oat milk.
It lasts forever. So
well, ATK
Audio Test Kitchen, 5 years.
Yeah. So it still exists, because I get that question, because it's just, I had to put it on the back burner a bit. I was pushing it so hard to feed me as a, just like to have it bring in enough revenue that it could pay the bills. And I never quite got it there. And on top of that, we were, I had a co-founder, and we kind of needed it to pay his salary. And then it just like, it became.
And then you had a vision to expand it probably.
Yeah. And it was so, like I said, the framework that I had set up was kind of this all or nothing mentality. And so if I could rewind time, I would say, like, we had opportunities, massive opportunities at like the highest level in the industry to just do the next incremental thing. And I just kind of like, I was like, yeah, well, if we're going to do that, we might as well do the grand vision. Yeah. So,
well, and I remember brainstorming with you, mm-hmm. and it was one of those kind of things that was super fun to brainstorm about. So you must have gotten so many, brilliant ideas from people. You
true.
Really ought to do this.
It's true. And, but what I didn't have, now I'm thinking about speaking from lack, but, there's another thing that I did, and so this is my therapy session. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. It's a pleasure. It's your therapy session, Rockstar.
Yeah.
And all these things we're talking about, they remind me of making records too, but I'll wait my turn.
So,
I'll jump in. So
yeah, go ahead.
So when we're talking about maintaining that experience versus solving a really difficult problem, and the stress that comes with that, and that sense of free fall, how in the world is it going to come together, all of that applies to making records. I 100% can think of the times where there's times where I almost prefer some creative chaos in the studio. In fact, I do, mostly, because I think there's something wonderful that comes out of music making and art when you're trying to balance chaos against intention. Certainly in songwriting, there's the inner critic that is all about intention. It's all about logic. And well, that's stupid. That doesn't make sense. That doesn't sound any good. And so you're trying to find ways to like distract yourself and fool yourself so that the subconscious and the creative stuff comes forward. And then, when you make records where there's a wildness to it and you're not sure how you're going to get that sound, you try to go for things, and there's a risk factor. You don't know if it's really going to work. You're trying some crazy idea. You're hoping that the artist likes it. You're hoping that when you're done with it, the audience likes it. And then on the flip side of it, there's the sessions where you're like, I absolutely know that these standard mic configurations work when a band comes in here, and I know how to get a good sound, and then I can just kick back and relax, and I know that we'll start on time, and we'll take a lunch break on time, and we'll end on time, and everybody will get something pro, but it might not be any good, so they have that kind of internal thinking about it too. So it's interesting to me to think about the ways that, in the creative arts and entrepreneurial risks are totally paralleled in those respects.
You just touched on a theme which I've begun to embrace more and more, and that is the not knowing.
Are we allowed to ever? Sometimes I just want to kick the theme instead of just touching on it.
Ooh, a theme that we're kicking the door in. is this idea of like I can sometimes get so attached to how I want something to go or how I want it to turn out, and I've begun to actually embrace, not just theoretically, but really embrace that most likely something is going to happen that is not planned, and it's probably going to be better, definitely different, and possibly better than I could have ever imagined.
Yeah. Rock your music production with the updated Complete 15 bundle from Native Instruments, featuring the new Contact 8. This comprehensive collection includes a fantastic range of versatile synths, sampled instruments, and innovative studio effects, giving you everything you need to bring your music to life. Whether you're composing emotional scores, deep dance floor grooves, or experimenting with sound design, Complete 15 has you covered. Discover powerful plugins and instruments that guide you from the initial idea all the way through to the final mix. The included Contact 8 introduces exciting new tools like chords and phrases for instant inspiration, the Leap tool for dynamic looping, and Conflux, a cutting-edge hybrid instrument that merges organic and synth sounds in real time. Plus, enjoy revamped versions of Massive X and Guitar Rig 7 Pro to take your sound to the next level. Then polish your mixes off with the AI-enhanced Isotope Ozone 11 included in Complete 15 bundle. Use the code ROCK10 for 10% off at nativeinstruments.com.
Two things. It's going to happen whether I want it to or not. And so might as well embrace it. Here's an example. The reason that I'm so fortunate to be able to sit here with you in your presence and have this great eye contact with you and experience, recording your podcast in person is because through Sound Vision Works, we're in town to record, to make videos for 4 of our
for the clients that you're working
with. Yeah.
So, and if it's too much eye contact, just hold your hand up in front of my camera and just wave it. You can give us a break.
You're all of a sudden I'm seeing how great you are as a host, as someone who, as the interviewer. It's so important, like what you're doing right now, to like have this like welcoming and reassuring presence. I was in that seat. Yeah, it's so powerful, like to be on the receiving end of that, because I basically was you for the last 2 days with Pat McMakin over at the Tracking Room. That studio is living on, by the way.
That's an amazing space, man. What a cool thing to hear that you guys are going to be part of bringing it, making it happen.
Got to interview Pat. They acquired a bunch of Wolf Audio Memore headphone mixers. Got to interview Dave Kalmusky over at Addiction. Wow.
Great place.
Oh my gosh. It's just, that dude's a rock star. Oh my gosh. They're using the Memore from Wolf. And then we went over to Vance Powell's place, and he was actually, in a brainstorming session with Wolf Audio founders, Paul Wolf and Jared Vogt, insisted that if they were going to make a digitally controlled or software controlled automated patch bay, that it had to be relay based, because that's the only way to have like a straight wire connection, have no coloration in the circuit path, because it's literally, there is nothing in the circuit path other than a straight wire relay. Yeah. That was the only way that he or anybody he knew would use it. So like a year later, they showed up with like exactly that. They have totally relay based 128 patch point patch bay called the Pro Patch. So
that's actually the last time I saw you was at AES, at the Wolf Audio booth.
Yeah.
Seeing that patch bay going.
That's right. And you can hear it. It's quiet. There's no fan, but you can hear it's all passive. If you unplug that from it, you only have to hook it up to a laptop. It just goes off USB.
That's how much power it needs.
It's like almost no power. And once you, let's say you set up a patch and you unplugged it, it's passive. It just stays right there. It stays patched. Anyway, so we got to interview Vance about that, and so I'm in that interviewer seat, and then finally Pete Lyman, who's also Wolf Audio Pro Patch user, using it in the mastering context.
Wolf Audio Pro Patch.
Yes,
that's the name of it. Okay,
yes,
cool.
It's actually launching on November 20th. So
it'll be out by the time this comes out.
Right. Yeah.
Thanks for dating the episode.
Yeah, sorry about that. So it's coming out. It'll be out. But there's
Yeah.
such a special relationship that happened. So we had maybe a plan, maybe not a plan, a general plan, maybe some ideas of a plan in our conversation. I had scripted out a lot of questions
Yeah.
going into these interviews. And sitting down to the first one, I realized like halfway through, oh my God, I am not getting to barely any of these questions. And it doesn't matter. There's something else that's happening here. It's creating itself. Same thing happened with Vance. Same thing happened with Dave. Even though I researched those guys, I know them personally. It does give me kind of like a sense of where to go. But like it's the people in the room creating that will guide it where it needs to go. And the shit that happens in the room is the thing that makes the thing. And like, of course, there are times when we need that intentionality, and it's like, well, but it's great to kind of be comfortable with both of them coexisting, and for maybe one to take over at a moment, and then for another, but let's remember where, it's fine that we're inventing all this stuff on the spot, but where ultimately are we going?
Right.
We have to like have a video that comes out, for example.
When I started this podcast, I remember, I forgot who it was that I was listening to, and they were talking about doing interviews themselves, and they said that they had this show, and it was pretty good. It was doing okay. But then at the point where they started like deep diving into the research on every guest and like reading the whole book, which that's a lot. I mean, like if I was interviewing authors and I had to read a whole book every week,
you'd be Stephen Colbert.
I wouldn't be able to do it. I don't read that fast. But but if I had to listen to music, but so for me, it's similar. It's like, that's why I love getting a bunch of information and getting music playlists, and I'll just sit there and like pour through it. And I get to ask some of the questions that are on my sheet, but I've always, I try to do that where it's like, I'll go in and really be prepared so that in winging it, it just feels natural. And it's also, I mean, I'm coming up on close to 500 interviews now for the podcast. It's a lot of things and people to hopefully know something about at the time.
That's commitment. That's consistency. I admire and respect that so much. There are probably times when you didn't want to do it, or it felt like, I had all kinds of questions, but the fact that you just kept going and did it anyway, I don't know. Well, how would you, let me ask you.
Ask away.
Yeah. So how does that feel? How's coming up on 500 feel?
It feels great. I love it. It's fun to go every once in a while and look and see. I think we're probably like, this moment, we're probably crossing 3 million downloads of the podcast, which is a fun feeling. And the accumulation of all that, and the statistics are, it's kind of nice, but I mean, it's like, you look at your Facebook post and you're like, look at all those likes. I mean, it's not that, it's not that soul satisfying, that detail. But what happens is I'll go to the events like NAMM and AES, or I'm just out and about. I was at a local bar, and I was telling an old friend who didn't know anything about the show, because it just wasn't part of his world. He was focused on something else. He was like, oh, that's cool. And then the bartender comes up and he's like, hey man, are you Lij Shaw? And I was like, and he was like, oh yeah, I love the show. So, and I think I had met him at when he was doing live sound somewhere before. So like running into people who are, you listening to the show, Rockstar, whoever you are, whomever I'm speaking to right now, to say hi to you and be able to have you tell me that you've enjoyed interacting with all the guests we've had on the show. That's really satisfying to me, because my favorite part about making music and making records is the people and the community. And like, it's fun to go play all the instruments myself, but what am I going to like tell myself that it sounds great and then like smile back at myself in that moment? It's like, it's so much more fun to be in a studio with a group of people as a band, and you're assembled and trying to score a goal together,
Can we talk about music for a second?
Yeah.
I haven't been making records at nearly the pace I ever did. In fact, I've made like 1 or 2 records in the last few years. But I've been obsessing over one, and it just occurred to me as you were talking, like, as a mixer, you said one of the things you value the most is the people and the experience. I get into this mode, or got into this mode, mixing a record recently for a band called Well of Wishes. And maybe it'll be out by the time this podcast is out.
It could be.
We're just in the mastering stages. Will Borza is mastering it for us. He works with Howie Weinberg. Will and I became friends through Apogee. Will is incredible. He's like the perfect balance of scientist and artist. Like on the science side, he can make anything happen. As a mastering engineer, it's really stunning. And like he just like took my mixes. In some cases they really needed help and like to complete my vision, because I felt like I couldn't do it myself in the context that I had, and he was able to like totally complete my vision. It's so cool. But I obsessed over these mixes, and I can listen to them over and over and over again, and I'm asking myself, as we're talking about the process of making records, why is that? And the analogy that I've come up with is that I have made permanent my ideal meal. Imagine being able to, like, someone says, what's your favorite meal? Oh, it's like sushi and blah, blah, blah. And, or like it's like French fries and
it's
a chocolate
marmalade
shake,
and pickles,
whatever it is. And it's like, but imagine eating that meal like over and over and over again, and you kind of get tired of it. But let's say you didn't. Imagine you didn't get tired of. You crafted the perfect flavors and balances and all this, and every time you listened or ate it, it triggered those exact senses in the exact way that you wanted it to.
Yeah.
That's what I've done with these mixes. Like, to whatever extent they're good or bad, other people like them, whatever, from the material that's there, I crafted something that every time I listen to it, it is just this perfect, it is this wonderful meal for the ears.
I mean, coming from a test kitchen chef, I mean, that's saying something too. I mean,
for my ears, and that's the thing, is like, I feel so selfish about it. And like, I mixed and like way longer than I probably should have. And thank you so much, Doug Townsley, my collaborator, the artist, the writer, it's his band.
Thank you, Doug,
for being patient with me and letting me mix, because I essentially created something that like is something that I can listen to over and over again, that I love every time. It tickles all the right places.
Do you feel like the time that you've spent watching YouTube videos, trying out mix tricks, and tweaking version after version of your mixes has gotten you nowhere? Have you been looking for more of a simple and straightforward step-by-step process for creating a pro mix that won't take years to learn? What if you could have a Grammy-winning mix engineer who understood all of your struggles and could coach you through them? If you struggle with any of these questions, then the Ultimate Mixing Masterclass is just for you. Now you can discover the proven step-by-step mixing system from Grammy-winning mix engineer Craig Alvin for consistently creating a pro-quality mix in your home studio that will sound great everywhere. Listen to this quote from one of our students, David. That was absolutely the most helpful and informative block of information and mentoring on the mixing process that I have ever been a part of. That was like sitting behind a mix engineer for years, watching and picking up pro tips along the way, condensed into a 6 to 7 hour session. Look, I'm so confident that this will help you take your mixes to the next level, that if you can't get a killer mix in 30 days, I'll give you a refund, no questions asked. So if you're ready to take your mixes to Grammy-winning quality, then go to ultimatemixingmasterclass.com and start now by checking out the free preview of the Ultimate Snare Mixing Trick. And hopefully I'll see you in the front row of the Grammys. That's a good point too, because I've done sessions with artists where sometimes you just have to get to the finish line and let go pretty quickly, or your time's up and you have to just sort of do your best work and then just be willing to let go of it. And then there's other times where the artist really lets me keep pursuing it and keep dialing it in and dialing it in and dialing it in. And yes, you're absolutely right. You can overdo it, but hopefully if we're good at what we do, hopefully by listening to this podcast, we've learned a lot. I'm going to say we, because I know you're listening and you're thinking, you've learned something, but trust me, I've learned a ton on this show through this whole process too, right along with you. See, I'm addressing the individuals.
Yeah, hey,
I'm
hi, you.
learning right now. But what's my point? My point is, when we're good at making records and we're really going for it, revision after revision, we should also have a process of checking back against our benchmark, checking against the previous mix and the roughs, and when we do that, we discover I know when we've crossed the line, and then back up to where we were and really get something nailed. So I appreciate what you're saying. I mean, like, dialing in, pursuing something until you're like, I've crossed everything off my list that I had to cross off, and now I can just enjoy it, knowing that I've got all the stuff sorted out, is a good feeling.
I decided I've invented like the ultimate personal massage machine or back rubber machine. I built it in my garage, and every time I strap it on, this is gonna sound funny. Every time I hit go on that
this is an imaginary
machine,
product.
yes, that's what it is. It's imaginary, but maybe, I don't know. It tickles me in all the right places, and that's these mixes that I built. So it's a pleasure. It's a guilty, selfish pleasure. So thank you again, Doug Townsley.
Well, as somebody who is maybe recording more records at the moment than you are, at this time, I can promise you that, like, I feel that way all the time about records. Just, it's so much. I constantly want to listen to the stuff I'm working on.
I'm so jealous. God, what a treat.
That's the fun part about it for me. It's like, and if it's, I mean, yes, I'll print rough mixes, and then there's many times where I leave the studio and I listen to like a split second of it, and I'm like, I'm done with that one, because I just simply know it's not where it's going to be. Mm-hmm. And I know in my head what I need to do next. But like, I just love listening to, it's an addiction. Like I feel guilty about it sometimes. I don't go turn on the music streaming service and always go listen to everybody else's records. I mean, I do through the podcast. I do a ton of that too. But I'm like pulling up sampling, and I'm just like listening to the various stuff we've been working on. Oh. I remember Eddie Van Halen was quoted as saying that once. He was like, yeah, I don't really listen to other music. I'm just listening to whatever I'm working on all the time. And I was like, that's interesting.
So cool. And why not like make if you don't love your masterpiece, I mean, you can't always make a masterpiece,
well,
but when
sometimes
you can,
it's a masterpiece in the works.
That's true.
And that's what you're listening to. That's often what I'm hoping that I'm listening to.
In the woodshed.
Yeah. But anyway, it's fun. So let's see, what else should we talk about? With Sound Vision Works. Am I saying that right? I want to make sure I'm not saying it the wrong way.
Or you could say the German Sound Vision Works.
Sound Vision Works. I'm guessing that the sound is kind of the space that you're working in. You're working with audio creators,
audio companies,
and the vision might be the aspect of it's the sort of the marketing aspect of it too, where it's like, we need to help you be seen.
That's right.
Have you learned a lot about, share some tips with us about what would be smart for us about marketing our studios, maybe ourselves as producers, or the music that we're making as a band? Maybe those are three different things.
Understand the tools like Instagram and the formats, and ask ChatGPT or Google like how to do things and best practice. I actually love having a dialogue with ChatGPT. Yeah. Like, it's so weird that I think we're in a whole new era where like you don't have to wonder about anything anymore. Not anything, but like something you're like, oh, I'm not sure how to do that. You can literally just ask an AI and know almost anything. Like if something's keeping you from like, oh, I'm not sure how to set up my cameras to blah 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 to do a video, a vlog. You can easily know that within a few minutes. So anyway, have that practice, have that at the ready to guide you to answer questions, and then just please let your own creativity, let your own vision be your guide. We are each our own brand. And so it should have your stamp on it. If it's your studio, your approach as a mastering engineer. I think there's I'll call it trends, but there's kind of like patterns or phases of how people like communicate visually, stylistically, what have you. But it's typically like something disruptive, something that's like stands out from the crowd that gets people's attention. And isn't that the goal? To get attention and get attention on you and your brand. So like, why play it safe? Like that, I think that's actually.
What if somebody's like, yeah, but I don't know what my brand is. I don't know what my voice is. What are your thoughts about that?
Think about like where someone like Warren Hewitt started. If you go back, whatever it is, 8 years, something like that, to when he first started, look at, I mean, the production quality, not so good, whatever. Like someone might say, oh my gosh, look at all these embarrassing moments or whatever. But he just started. He just did it.
Right.
And he kept iterating as he went. Maybe
I can remember a specific moment. You want to hear
for
it?
you?
No, for Warren's.
Yeah.
A Warren story that was great. And it was related to Slate. And it might have been, I was maybe after you there, or maybe it was the same time, but there was the virtual mic locker plugin where you would use the mic and then you'd, I think, put the plug-in in the mic pre in the like the little rack or whatever, and then see what it sounded like. And in the video, he accidentally like put the mic after the mic pre or something like that, so it didn't
the mic pre after the mic.
Yeah, so it didn't really work.
Right. Yeah,
but and then that came up later, and he just joked about it. He's just like, whatever, you sometimes just make a video and you just mess up, and then you make the next one later. And that really struck me. I was like, it's such a great attitude toward it. It's like, whatever, you got, if you don't put yourself out there and you're willing to like make some mistakes along the way and then own up to them and smile about it.
Yeah.
That or by doing that lets you just get to the next one. You make the next one. And for me, doing the podcast, for doing this video stuff, big time for me. It was like I busted my ass to learn how to just get to this stage of doing it, and then understand, you know what? It doesn't have to be at the next stage yet. I can just, as I go, every week or whatever, or every day, I'll try something new and something different, and ultimately, hopefully down the road, Rockstars, you'll be like, Lij, you really did it with that video podcast. We'll see if I get there.
Well, how do you find your own brand? And my challenge right now is like, I have a creative vision, and yet I have to represent other people's creative visions. I've got to represent. We have 3 main clients right now, a few more coming: Wolf Audio, Equitech, and KSD, or KS Digital, out of Germany. They have their own brand. They have their own look and feel, the things that they're going to be comfortable saying, the way they represent themselves. So it's actually, it's both a challenge, but it's also a treat to get inside the minds of these companies and like their philosophy. Paul Wolf has like a unique.
He's awesome.
I think people who know Paul understand why I can't finish this sentence. Paul Wolf is unique, period. But it's just like, how do you represent that brand? And also, like, here's the thing: like, could be Paul or someone else. It's like Paul has a strong personality, and his products have like such a incredible reputation, and it's like, at what point do you represent? Is it wise to bring the creator's personality into the marketing conversation, or do we isolate that and just talk about the products? So there's probably some balance in there, and that's something that that it's our job to explore it. And of course, there's feedback from the likes and the comments and the engagement.
Yeah, I'm just pulling it up right now.
You just got to keep testing. Yeah. I think that's the thing, is it's one test after another. The test is never going to end. Just
so let me drop in a specific shout out to Paul and the products you guys are working with over there. This
thanks.
One, the personal monitor mixer.
Yeah.
That one really catches my
Memore.
attention. The Memore, right? Because that is one that I think each of us is interested in an area that we're thinking about next. So for me, leveling up the monitoring in a studio situation is an exciting next step for me. Do you want to give that product a shout out, or tell the Rockstars what it is?
Product development is sometimes you aren't sure, like, if there's like a product market fit, and in this case there's just a huge vacuum, and there's like, it's the perfect moment for the Memore, because there's a range of analog studio headphone mixers, aka personal monitor mixers, that are no longer made, and there's a whole range of them that were popular that are all breaking down, and they're hard to maintain, and you can't get the parts, and the company doesn't exist, all these things. So not only it turns out that the Me More is like a great product in itself, and actually like it solves a lot of problems that these other products, didn't address. And it has like, it's great build quality and longevity and reliable and all that, but like they just aren't made anymore.
For 15 years, I had a famous MCI console at my studio that originally came from Criteria Studio C in Miami, where it made some of the most iconic Grammy-winning records of the 1970s. And it sounded incredible. When I was ready to upgrade my studio to a full digital mixing setup, I teamed up with Rick Carson at Make Believe Studio, Metric Halo, and Golden Ear producer Bill Simzik to recreate the legendary MCI console as the new MBSI plugin. The MBSI captures the same iconic sound used on multi-million selling records like Hotel California for the Eagles, Saturday Night Fever and Staying Alive for the Bee Gees, I Shot the Sheriff for Eric Clapton, We're an American Band for Grand Funk Railroad, and the soundtrack to Grease, the movie, all for legendary producers like Tom Dowd, Todd Rundgren, and Bill Simzik. The MBSI plugin not only delivers the authentic sound of the original MCI console faithfully, but it also adds new features like a top-notch compressor, overdrive, and a dual EQ filter switch, adding tools that Bill Simzik said he would have loved to have in the original console. Now you too can get that Grammy-winning MCI sound in your home studio. Whether you're recording or mixing, you can experience the sound of Miami 1976 with the MBSI plugin and soak up a little sunshine in your sound at makebelievestudio.com/MBSI.
So like, that's why Pat McMakin in the new 2.0 version of the tracking room that we can't talk about because it's top secret, but that's coming online. They got 14 of them, and that's why. And sometimes products are just like the perfect fit. Blackbird has like over 50 Equitechs. Their whole studio is powered by Equitech. That's part of their sound. It's like it's foundational to their studio. And Equitech has products that are just as foundational as like acoustic treatment in a studio. That you
tell the rockstars what the Equitech is.
Equitech it's beyond like something like a traditional power conditioner where it actually like has a giant transformer in it. They weigh like 50 pounds, even the smallest ones. And what it does is it essentially is as if you could get the perfect feed of electricity off the grid, which you can't because off the grid, it's always noisy. It always has inconsistencies, spikes, noise. And what that means when the power is bad, everything that's powered in your studio, which is your entire studio, is underperforming. When you can give products the ideal supply of electricity through this giant Equitech transformer, it puts everything in it's like everything is operating in its ideal like space. It's like
right. It's like letting people breathe fresh air and eat clean food and drink clean water.
That's it. Giving your gear the perfect diet at all times, the right amount of rest and sleep so what was I going to say? So
let's see. We were talking about the Me More
from Wolf, and they have a number of products. They have like the 500 series mic preamps. They have this beautiful 500 series EQ that can sound like a Pultec on the top and bottom, and be like very sweet and very precise in the middle. And those all can be part of Paul's console. So Paul owned API for 20 years.
That's right.
Paul created one of the most popular and legendary bus compressors ever, the API 2520.
Amazing.
He created the 550 BEQ. He created the 212 series mic pre's, and on and on and on. I mean, this was his company for 20 years. He sold it and moved on and created his next console company, which was ToneLux. They made 500 series EQs. He sold that. Now he has a new partner, Jared Vogt, who comes from the software world and the digitally controlled analog world. Now they're their own super company making the best of analog and the best of digital, and they are just scratching the surface of what they are planning to do. The things that they have up their sleeves with digitally controlled analog is phenomenal. And so here you have like this, Paul Wolf is the last living great console designer.
Yeah.
He's the last Rupert Neve that's out there. He's the who was it? Sal at API, was that his name? You know, so you have this legend who is still incredibly energized. Paul lives for making amazing tools for his friends. That's what he says. I make tools for my friends.
Right.
And Paul and Jared went around Nashville before they created the Pro Patch. They sat with Vance Powell. They sat with Pete Lyman. You know, they worked with Dave Kalmusky and with Pat McMakin before they made the Me More, because they interviewed them. They said, "What's missing? What do you need?"
Right.
They built the products that people need for their studios. That's the same thing with Equitech, like the KSD guys in Germany. I'm just name dropping all of our clients, but
That's great. Do it.
But these are people these are the craftsmen and women. These are the craftspeople. They make tools that enable us to realize our vision in music, in audio. KSD was the first company to ever put DSP in a studio monitor.
Oh, really?
25 years ago. Yeah. And they're like, if you went to Germany, among engineers, they're the household name. They're the ATC, the PMC, the Focal of Germany. And they've never really tried to make a dent in the US market. So Sound Vision Works, the company that I'm working for as on the marketing side, is just now bringing KSD to the USA. And like at the AES show, we had people just like walk by our booths, and like we had a couple of guys, I got a video of them saying like, we were just walking by, curious, sat down. We sat and listened for 45 minutes. We just couldn't stop listening to these things because we kept discovering things in our own music and in our productions. And I have this whole series of videos coming out. Like, this is where like my job gets super, super fun as the marketing guy, because what it is I'm trying to connect the right tool with the person who needs that tool. And so all it is, it's a matter of making a connection. It's a matter of bringing awareness, like trying to find that person who has that need, who's been searching to solve a problem or to like a pathway to realize their vision. And if I can like introduce them to the product that is like, at least for now, the perfect next step in their path or the perfect pathway to realize that vision, that's my job. That's my goal. And as you said, Lij, it's noisy out there. It's like, how do you get people's attention? So that's the trick of it. But like, I will talk about KSD for another second, because I just love speakers. I was talking with Vance the other day, and he's like, this is why analog will never go away, because we hear analog.
Yeah, right. I think I just said that on yesterday's interview.
Exactly. And I think even
our eardrum's still going to be analog.
They will be until, some other, brain plug-in, whatever. And I love transducers because also it's a change in state of energy. A microphone changes a state of energy, is a motion of something physical, of air, changes it into electricity. And the speaker does the opposite. It changes electricity into physical air movement, that moves your body. It literally moves your body. I just love that. I think there's something so exciting about that change in state of energy.
It's all about the air. It's
all about the air. It's all about feeling the low, hearing the silky highs. That's how I actually got into audio, was being as a teenager. I would go on the weekends with my best buddy Russ Heron, shout out. We'd go on the weekends to listen to speakers in various stereo shops.
Ooh, that's fun stuff to do.
Yeah, just
I guess we have that in our pro audio places. I remember I used to go do that at the consumer audio hi-fi places. And then you go into the car stereo booth, where they get the car speakers all around you, and you like choose your stereo and select your speakers.
Was it an early version of Atmos and they just didn't know it?
I think it might have been. It might have been. Well, very cool, dude. Well, it's great having you on the show again. It's always fun to hang out with you. And I enjoyed, just getting a chance to kind of talk philosophy on creativity and taking risks and all that kind of stuff. Let me ask you this question. It's our closing question that I always like to ask the guests on the show. And you've answered it before, but as a reminder, we're going to take the Wayback Studio machine. You get to go back in time and find young Alex, who's maybe being, maybe you're being interviewed on local Minnesota television, or maybe it's prior to that in the 90s, and you go back and say, listen, dude, I've come back to give you this one bit of advice. Here's the single most important thing you need to know to be that rock star of the studio or the entrepreneurial venture or what have you one day. What advice do you want to go back and give yourself if you could at this point?
Don't worry about if other people like it. If you like it, if you love it, if you believe in it, just do it.
I think that's great. It sort of harkens back to what you were saying about being true to yourself and finding your own voice. I mean, the thing that we all have to bring to the table that makes us so unique is just you. It's just you, rock star. It's just you, Alex.
The expanded version of that is there's something exciting on the other side of the risk. Take the risk. You are worried that all these things could happen. You'll be surprised once you take the risk about all the things you thought might happen that were bad things that don't, number one, and all the things that do happen that you didn't even predict, and it's all because you took a chance.
It's beautiful, man. I love it. That's well said.
It has been such a pleasure just to be here in your presence, to have eye contact with you, if I may say, as a I'm just saying, you have beautiful eyes, Lij.
No, thank you very much. Thank you very much.
It's been a pleasure.
To take my reading glasses off and,
it's been so
take
nice.
advantage of the 4K. Although actually you get the 4K. I get the 1080p here.
Well, if I can just
Those
say
are some nerdy video terms, rock stars.
In person, you have 8K eyes.
Well, thank you very much, man. I appreciate it. Let the rock stars know where can they find you now? So what if they're
on
what
Instagram,
if they're just wanting to connect, or what if they're curious about the companies you're working with, or what if they're launching an incredible new piece of equipment for our studios?
Yeah, we may, as Sound Vision Works, love to help get the word out and tell your story. soundvisionworks.com.
Okay, great. We'll have links to that in the show notes too, Rockstars. And maybe I'll even have a link to the YouTube video from 2003.
It's so fun.
That's great.
Let's see. So I'm Alex at soundvisionworks.com. On Instagram, Alex Oana. I think it's all one word. ALEXOANA. What else?
So if anybody listening is curious about any of the particular products that these companies you're working with.
Right. Okay.
Is it fair to connect?
Absolutely. So I believe it's wolfaudio.com. It's equitech.com, and that's EQUITECH. And then I think it's KS Audio or KSD Audio. If you can just get that corrected in your show notes. Right. But it's essentially KS Digital. If you Google that, it's German studio monitor company. Beautiful stuff.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
Well, dude, thanks for joining us on the show, Rockstars. Thank you again for watching. If you got questions or comments, please drop them in the comments below. Now that we're in the world of comments and video, and then remember to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel here so you can get more videos from us. And we'll see you around the studio again.
Thank you, Lij. Please like and subscribe.
Cheers. Thanks so much for listening to Recording Studio Rockstars. If you enjoyed the show and want to help make it better, then please share this episode with your friends on social media and leave a rating and review on iTunes to help the podcast reach more rock stars like yourself. You can click directly over to iTunes or go to rsrockstars.com/review for an easy explanation. And remember to hit the subscribe button to keep up with weekly episodes. And if you're ready to make your best record ever now, then head over to Recording Studio Rockstars Academy, where you can start with my free course at mixmasterbundle.com. Thanks so much for listening, and thanks for being a rock star. I'm Lij Shaw, and this is Recording Studio Rockstars. Now, go make great music. Recording Studio Rockstars would like to give a big thank you to our awesome sponsors who help make this episode possible. iZotope, Native Instruments, Roswell Pro Audio, and Atom Audio. And remember to take advantage of our special coupon codes. At iZotope.com and nativeinstruments.com, use the coupon code ROCK10 for 10% off any plugin. If you enjoyed Recording Studio Rockstars, please check out our sponsors using the links in our show notes. These are all things that I highly recommend for your studio because they're going to help you make your best record ever. Also, like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. This is new for us here, and it's a great way for you to help support this show, so I greatly appreciate it. I would also like to thank our fantastic team here at Recording Studio Rockstars, Vlad Weselchenko and Liz Hulitskaya. Thanks so much for watching and for listening. My name is Lij Shaw, and I'll see you in the next episode. Cheers.